What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
So let's see. What are we doing? Oh, we're just chilling, doing our thing. And blammo, we get a package in the mail for Easter from my parents. And inside this package is like all these extra little things. And I just have to shout out my cousin, John. I don't know if he wants me to say his last name, so I'm not going to. I need to figure out like how he sells these, but he 3D prints, and he 3D printed us coasters that have our Crime Bitches logo on them, and they are fabulous. Like, they are actually going to be in the podcasting room because we always have drinks in the podcasting room anyways. And so it was a huge surprise. And so shout out, John. Thank you so much. We genuinely appreciate that.
And Trisha will post a picture of them.
I will post a picture,
Instagram too.
On Insta.
And if we find a link, like if he sells them, and we find
a
link, we'll attach that link.
Absolutely.
To that.
I'm going to post them on Insta, and I'm also going to post them on TikTok. So if you want to see what they look like, they'll be posted in the next, they'll be posted. If you haven't seen them, go check them out because they'll already be posted by the time this comes out.
Which also leads into Happy Easter for those of you who also celebrate Happy 420.
For those of you that celebrate Easter, today is when we're recording is Easter. Or if you're not a person who partakes in Easter, you might partake in 420. So
Happy 420.
Happy 420, whatever floats your boat, right? But I just had to shout that out. And like I said, if I can find out like where he sells them, or if he has a website or a Facebook or whatever, I will shout it out on the next podcast. But then I will also make sure that it's tagged when I post up these coasters, because I shit you not, they're fabulous. So that's all I got to say. The end. Have a nice week. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. One of these times I should make Sierra research and tell us a story.
Oh, fuck no. You think I got time for that shit?
Bitch, I don't got time for it either, but I make time.
I have a full-time job.
I have a full-time 2 jobs because I do 2 podcasts, which is like a full-time job, each of them.
That you get to sit at home and research. I physically go to work.
Yeah,
you could research all day if you wanted.
Yeah, I could, and I do, and it takes me forever. So anyways, okay. So you want to hear what we be talking about?
Sure.
Okay, so we are going to actually talk about the murder of Vera Jo Reigle. Dun, dun, dun. Before we get started, this is a really disturbing story. So I want to make this very clear. It is really disturbing. And to be honest with you, the only reason I'm sharing it is because I think it's important. There are some important aspects to it that need to be shared with the public. Maybe this could be like a keep your eye open type thing. This is a learning. This is a definite, you can learn from this episode. However, it is very, very gruesome, disturbing, and horrific. So if you are afraid of what you might hear, skip this episode. However, if you think you can sit through something pretty fucking awful, I really encourage you to, because there is a big takeaway from this. So just wanted to put that
And we will never be offended if you guys skip an
never.
episode.
Oh God, I would never
Please
be
don't
offended.
ever think.
No.
Please, I would rather you skip it than suffer through it.
Absolutely. So we'll just get into it. So we are talking about the year 2011. Police find the body of Vera Jo Reigle. They find her body between train tracks, and it was very evident that she had been hit by a train.
Damn.
This happened in Findlay, Ohio. Full stop. This is what I'm talking about. So if that part bothers you, do not listen. Do not listen. If it bothers you that we're going to be talking about somebody who was hit by a train, do not listen. I encourage you to maybe go up and maybe look up who Vera Jo was. Do not listen, because it's just not going to be worth your time. So see you next week if you're not going to be here. So we're going to first start a little background on Vera Jo. So Vera Jo was born July 11th, 1986, and she was born to Lynn and Verna Messersmith. Vera was born with intellectual disabilities. If you don't know what an intellectual disability is, that is the current term for what used to be known as mental retardation. That is what an intellectual disability is. So Vera was born with an intellectual disability. Now, her family said that as she became an adult, she actually ended up having the mind of a girl who's between the ages of 8 to 12. So at 24 years old or 22 years old or 21 years old, she never grew past the age of 12 in her brain. So that always makes that right here, there is why this
Basically,
case,
they're always going to have the mind of a child.
yes. And that right there is why this case was so important, I think, as to why this story needs to be told. She also had been diagnosed with ADHD. So not that ADHD is good or bad or nothing. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm giving you the background. She also had a sister named Ashley, and Ashley actually has come forward throughout the case to just talk about who Vera was. And she said that they would ride bikes together all the time. They would play together. They went to church together. So even though, I want to stress to everybody, even though people are born with intellectual disabilities, it does not mean that they're stupid. And it doesn't mean that they can't live a life. It just means that they will reach a certain age where their brain won't develop very much and they just need assistance. You know, and that's why this story is so fucking important, because this story talks about taking advantage of a woman with intellectual disabilities. Now, it was reported that Vera was repeatedly sexually and physically abused by her own father. And at some point, her father goes to jail. And actually, when he goes to jail, he gets 20 years. And it was for abusing her. That's what he went to jail for. And then her mom gets a new boyfriend and the abuse continues. So here again... But again, you have this, I don't know the statistics on it, but I do know that when people have disabilities of some sort, they seem to be prone to being attacked and persuaded and manipulated and all those things. Now, she does graduate high school in 2005 from Findlay High School, and she loved to be around people. She was not shy, she loved to hang out with people. She loved country music. She loved to wear jewelry. So she just did normal things. But again, as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old who had just graduated high school, some of the things she did were much younger than your typical 18-year-old. When she is 19 years old, I will repeat again, please remember, Vera had an intellectual disability and she did not have a brain that went above the age of 12. Vera meets and starts a relationship with 13-year-old Zachary Brooks. Now she's 19. In her brain, she is 12. And again, I'm not condoning, by the way. I'm not saying oh yeah, that's okay. What I'm saying is, she probably did not know any better. However, her mother, her stepfather, or Zachary's fucking parents should have never allowed this relationship to be a thing. Should have never allowed it. However, Zachary also was reported to have some cognitive disabilities. So it was kind of they met, they liked each other, whatever. And Zachary's mom, Sherry Lynn, welcomed Vera into the family with open arms. So Vera ends up actually moving in with this family. And when she moves in, the whole goddamn family lives there and they all are just oh, she's so great. They're so nice to her. They treat her really great. So that's Vera. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sherry Lynn Brooks, which is Zachary's mother. So Sherry was actually known around the community as Sugar Babe. Now, she was given this nickname by her father, which that's
fucking gross.
That just tells me there's a lot more to that story.
Yeah.
That I don't know. Her father also had been a meth dealer. So this just kind of gives you the background of what Sherry went through. Now, she was being described as a manipulative person that was also a compulsive liar. Some people actually even referred to Sherry as the female Charles Manson. So just keep that in mind. Now, when Sherry was 3 years old, she was actually put into the foster care system, and it was discovered that Sherry had been sexually abused by her father. And at the age of 13, she actually is returned to her mother's care after her mother and father get divorced. So for 10 years, she's in the foster care system. So that's going to fuck somebody up anyways. Then in 1981, Sherry gives birth to a baby boy named Scotty. Now, Scotty is later taken away from her due to allegations of sexual abuse. Then in 1982, Sherry gets married to a man named Mike, and she has her second child, Joshua. Now, the state already has their eye on her because of the fact that her first child was taken away, and they actually open up a case against her because she had previous allegations of sexual abuse of her other son. So they already have a case file for her and this new son. Now, in 1983, Sherry's husband actually slaps Joshua, the son, and tosses him onto the couch. And this actually leads to the removal of Joshua. So Joshua gets taken from her and her husband. Now, 1984, Sherry delivers another baby boy, Michael Jr. Now, within weeks of her delivery, the baby is taken away from her, due again to allegations of sexual abuse. Then in 1986, Sherry delivers a baby girl named Maria. Now,
this bitch needs to stop having kids.
Spoiler alert, she has 9 kids total.
Holy shit.
She loses custody of this baby as well, again, due to sexual abuse allegations. Now,
are the sexual abuse allegations against her?
Yes.
She,
her and her husband. Yes. Now, in 1987, she ends up having another baby girl named Sherry, which, remember, her name is Sherry. So she named the baby Sherry just like her. Now, again, sexual abuse allegations are brought forward, and she does lose custody of this daughter as well. Here's what I'm not understanding at this point. Why the fuck is she not in jail? At this point in time, why was she not in jail? If you have that many accusations of sexual abuse against your own children, how did you not go to jail? How did you not get arrested? Why are they just taking children from her? Why aren't we investigating, trying to I don't care, put her in a fucking mental institute and try to help her, or put her in jail. I don't give a damn, but she should not be able to keep procreating if this is what she's every time her children are being taken away. Then in 1993, Sherry delivers another baby boy named Kevin Jr. Now, the reason this baby's name is Kevin Jr. is because she had actually had an affair with a man named Kevin Brooks, and she got pregnant by Kevin. This actually leads to the divorce of her and Mike, and she ends up marrying Kevin. So now Kevin Brooks is now her husband, and she's got this baby with Kevin Jr. Now she ends up having 3 more children with Kevin. She has Zachary, who is Vera's boyfriend. She has Garth, and she has Chucky.
Those poor kids. For more reasons than one.
She did actually get to keep custody of all of those kids that she had with Kevin. So it almost makes me wonder, though. I can't say, but it almost makes me wonder, was the sexual abuse allegations against her husband?
Him, yeah.
Because there was not, the kids with the Kevin guy didn't get taken away.
Which would also make sense. He should have gone to jail too if that was the case, but it would make sense as why she wouldn't have gone to jail.
Because sometimes the sexual abuse is against the husband, but because the wife is still part of it, because she lives there type thing. Okay, so we're just going to get into kind of basically what has happened. Okay, so Vera is now living with the Brooks for some time. She's moved in with them. She's dating Zachary again. She's 19. He's 13. Now, when she gets in their family, like I said, she was treated fairly well. She was welcomed. Sherry in particular was like, yeah, come stay with us. Like, yep, you and Zachary can live in the same house, which again, he's 13. It does not take very long before they start to begin to mistreat Vera. Now, Sherry actually tells Vera that her mother hates her, like her own mother. So Vera's own mother. She basically tells her, your own mother hates you. You're living under my roof. You need to start helping out. So you need to sign over your monthly disability checks to me. Because I don't know if people know this, but in the United States of America, if you have a diagnosed intellectual disability and if your IQ does not go above a certain level, you can collect disability for that. I actually know somebody who does collect disability because they do have an intellectual disability, because when they were tested, their IQ fell 2 points below the line that draws between intellectual disability or not. So he's fully functioning. He can do plenty of things, but there's just something that goes, you think about it. If you have the mindset of a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old, it would be very hard to hold a job, right? It would be hard. So you do. So she was getting disability checks because of the fact that she's an adult. However, having an intellectual disability allows you to apply for disability. So she ends up signing over those monthly disability checks to Sherry. Now, Vera ends up getting pregnant, as you would probably assume, because I would assume that would happen. Now, Sherry decides at this point, you're having a baby. I'm going to take it upon myself to take control of this situation because you have an intellectual disability and my son is 13 years old. Obviously, this baby's mine, period. Now, I did see reports when I was reading that Sherry, encouraged them to have a baby because she wanted a baby girl. To be fair, looking at her history of having 9 children, I believe it. She just wanted more babies in the house. She was a baby person. Okay. So she pushes them to have a baby. Now, she actually forces Vera to name the baby what she wants. So she ends up naming the baby Willa Dean.
Oh, my God.
And she also convinces Zachary, her son, that he needs to sign over custody to her because, hello, he's only 13. Like, how are you going to take care of a baby? However, she moves over to Vera and is like, you need to sign custody over to me because how are you going to take care of this baby? To which Vera's like, but no, I want to be a mom. Like, this is my baby. Like, I want to be a mom. And she was excited about being a mom. Again, if she has the mind of a 12-year-old, 12-year-olds know, like, are they mature enough to take care of children? No. But they know what, I mean, I feel like they would understand the concept of motherly love. And that's what she felt.
Well, and even then, though, even if she has the intellectual ability of a 12-year-old, I mean,
I met some pretty mature ass 12-year-olds.
When I was 12 years old, people would talk to me like an adult. They would treat me like an adult. So if people are treating her and talking to her like an adult, not a kid, she could be a very mature 12-year-old and could.
The problem for her would be like she didn't work. Yeah, her not having a job and stuff would make it a little bit harder for her to be able to raise a baby. But you figure if she really was living in this house and they really cared about her, then it should have been fine. Like, she should have been able to have the help of the family to raise this baby, but she shouldn't have been forced to give the baby to Sherry. However, Sherry was like, it's mine. This baby is mine. So, and again, Vera was actually adamant that she was not going to give the baby over. She was like, no, not doing it. So she gets pissed because she's like, I want you to sign custody over. And Vera's like, but no, I want to be a mom. Like, I want to take care of this baby. So she refuses. She doesn't sign it. Well, Vera ends up delivering her daughter 6 weeks early. So she goes into labor 6 weeks early because Sherry forced her to drink castor oil. Now, for those of you who don't know, castor oil is actually a known method to put you into labor. If you are getting really close to your due date, and you're like not dilated or anything, doctors do tell you, like, I mean, at least I can't say that. I say this shit like I know. My children are 21.
I would say the oldest, which is me, I'm going to be 25 this year. So like this was 25 years ago. We're going to say
20 years ago. They would tell you like castor oil is a known method that women would drink some castor oil and it can put you into labor. So that is along with walking and swimming and all these other things. So, but Sherry giving it to her 6 weeks early, why would you give somebody castor oil 6 weeks prior to when they're supposed to give birth? That doesn't make sense. So Sherry gives her this castor oil. She goes into labor. She delivers the baby 6 weeks early. So on November 4th, 2009, Willa Dean is born. Now Sherry gets crazy fucking mad because in the hospital, as soon as Vera delivers the baby, what do they do in the hospital? As soon as the baby comes out, they give the baby to the mom. Always.
Unless you're you.
Unless it's me, because then I said, actually, that's not true. They did do that, but I said, wipe that motherfucker off first. With both of you guys, I was like, because they asked me, do you want baby? And I'm like, clean her off first. That's what both times, because that shit grossed me out. But they do. They put the baby on the mom because it's the mother, the skin. And whatever. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Then that's what they do always. And then in my case, after about 5 minutes, I was like, all right, you can go ahead and give the baby to the dad because I'm tired and I just want to lay here. I told y'all I don't have motherly instincts. They forced me to have the babies. And I'm like, listen, no, they didn't force me to have babies. They forced me to have the babies on my chest. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm tired. Can I go to bed now? Like, let me finish having because there's more to fucking birth than just having the baby. Like, give the baby to the dad. Okay. And then we'll be good. Like, it's fine. Anyways. But they normally give it, they put the mom, take the baby out, give it to the mom. They did that. And Sherry threw a fucking fit and was like, that is not where that baby goes. I demand that you give me the baby. I am the one who gets to hold the baby first. So they gave the baby to fucking Sherry, which also, if I was the nurse, I'd be like, no, ma'am, get out.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Get out. So once they get home, Sherry basically completely takes over raising Willa Dean. She won't allow Vera to do anything for the baby, even though she's trying. Like, she wants to feed the baby. She wants to change the baby. She wants to, Sherry won't let her do any of it. And at this point, she actually starts beating Vera. And the beatings get really bad at times. At one point, she even threatened to kill baby Willa Dean if Vera did not obey what Sherry was telling her to do. So she literally like flips the switch and just starts fucking being nasty. On August 5th, 2010, Sherry's son, one of Sherry's sons, Kevin Jr., actually dies in a car accident. He is actually struck by a car while he's walking around Findlay, Ohio. Like he's walking around with his baby mama and they're just like walking. Okay, I wasn't going to say it, but they were walking around looking for drugs. That's what they were doing. They were looking for drugs. And a car came down the road and actually hit him from the back and he died instantly. Now, this sends Sherry into like a real crazy, chaotic state because this is her fucking child. Now, she's trying to convince all of her family members that Kevin Jr.'s baby mama had actually pushed him in front of the vehicle and that's why he died, which is not what happened. That's not what happened, but that's what she was convinced happened. Now, during this time, the family members of Vera's actually had reported her living conditions to the police. So now Vera's family has kind of stepped in because they're kind of like, okay, this shit's not right. Well, anytime the police would show up to the house, they would show up on a domestic disturbance call because her family would call and report it. And Vera would actually do what they always do. She'd say, no, everything's fine. She would use typical excuses like, oh, I got these bruises from falling down the stairs, or, oh, I accidentally kicked the coffee table. Now, what's really fucking frustrating to me about that is I understand you get a lot of domestic disturbance calls to one place. First of all, I know you can't press charges if nobody's willing to press charges. Like, I get that. What bothers me a lot, though, is this family's living conditions were fucking awful. Like, absolutely awful. They would use buckets to go to the bathroom because they didn't have running water. But the police never did anything about this either. And that they could have. They could have taken Willa Dean out of the home because she was a baby. Those living conditions alone should have warranted for CPS, which I am not a fan of CPS, but it should have warranted that CPS stepped in and took the baby. That's horrendous living conditions for a child. Adults, whatever, but a child, and they didn't do shit. Nobody did anything about the living conditions. Nobody did anything about the fact that this woman, who intellectually was not of the same age as what her actual age was constantly being called the police that she was being abused, and there was signs of abuse, and nobody fucking did anything. This bothers me. So now in 2011, Sherry actually no longer gives a shit about Willa Dean, and she doesn't even want Vera to live in her house anymore because she doesn't give a fuck. She actually would withhold food from Vera, and she would only allow her to eat what was left over from the other family members' meals. That's all she was allowed to eat. And at one point, Vera was so hungry that she took a candy bar that had been sitting like on the mantle in the house, that Sherry had actually put that candy bar on the mantle in honor of her dead son, Kevin Jr. So nobody was allowed to touch it. Vera was so hungry, though, that she took that bitch and ate it. And there was another girl that was living in the home with them, one of the other boys' like girlfriends, and she saw Vera do that. So she told.
You fucking rat.
I'm saying, right? I'm like, why are you telling? At this point, Sherry actually ends up forcing Vera to basically live in like the tiniest fucking closet, like Harry Potter style, like tiniest fucking closet. Now, while she's in this closet, food is withheld from her. So she is actually forced to eat feces, blood, and trash from garbages just to survive. So this is what her living conditions are. Now, Sherry's cousin's son. So Sherry has a cousin, his son, Daniel Bixler Jr. He needs a place to stay, him and his girlfriend. So he reaches out to Sherry. He's like, hey, you got room? And she's like, yeah, okay. So he ends up moving into Sherry's home with his girlfriend, Nicole Peters. Now, once they move in, those two actually begin beating and torturing Vera as well. Probably because Sherry told them to do it, to be honest with you. That's what it kind of sounds like. Now, Sherry tells Daniel and Nicole that they should, Sherry says she says it jokingly, but supposedly she told Daniel and Nicole that they should drug Vera with sleeping pills, force her to lie down on the train tracks. Then a train wouldn't see her and would run her over. And then Sherry continues to tell Zachary, Daniel, and Nicole that Vera was the one who pushed Kevin Jr. in front of the car, which caused his death.
She wasn't even there.
Nope. And then she also said, we need to avenge Kevin Jr.'s death. So this is what
bitch, get over it.
This is what is being told. This is what is being said. So on March 24th, 2011, Zachary brutally beats the shit out of Vera and sexually assaults her. She was actually left where she could barely walk the next day. That's how bad she was beaten. Then she was forced, as she can't hardly fucking walk, she is forced into the bathroom in the home where Danny and Nicole then decide to beat the shit out of her and stab her. Then that same day, other family members in the household forced Vera to eat dog feces and garbage. So this is all happening within like a fucking 24-hour period. Then on March 26th, 2011, Danny, Zachary, Nicole, and Chucky take turns stabbing Vera. And I don't know, I mean, to be honest, I don't know if they're like stabbing her in, like, I don't know if they're like little stabs, like they're poking the shit out of her. I don't know, but they take turns stabbing her. Now, the next chain of events that happens is actually very unclear because every person in that family has their own version of what happened. And none of them match, except for Danny and Nicole's. Those are the only two that match, which makes sense because they're boyfriend and girlfriend. So Danny and Nicole, we're just going to talk about their version because that's the only version that really fucking matters. Because Danny and Nicole said they forced Vera to walk with them. They literally, so here she is, beaten, sexually assaulted, stabbed multiple times, forced to eat dog feces, garbage, can hardly walk. And they're like, hey, bitch, get up. We're going to go for a walk. So they take her out of the home and take her for a walk. They bring her to the train tracks. Now, they repeatedly stab her at the train tracks. And then they force Vera to strip naked. And then once she's like not fighting back at all, like she's just done, they force her to lie down on the train tracks. And then they leave her there to die. That's what they did. At 2 a.m., a train came upon the tracks. And the train conductor saw what he thought was a deer on the tracks. And he couldn't stop, obviously, because that just is what happens. You can't see that far ahead. So he slows down as soon as he can, but he ends up hitting this deer, or what he thought was a deer. After hitting it, he realizes it was a human. So he obviously comes to a complete stop, calls the police. The police then immediately go to Sherry because they find out who this girl is. They know who, they are able to identify her some way, somehow. They go and talk to Sherry, and Sherry tells the police that, oh, well, Vera had a black boyfriend and he probably killed her, which, by the way, Zachary was her boyfriend, which is her son. And the police then search the house because they're like, well, this house is already fucking on our list of all kinds of shit. We've been here multiple times. So they look through the house and they actually find a bloody shirt that belonged to Nicole. Nicole, the woman, Danny's girlfriend, Nicole, she had a shirt that had blood on it and a bloody belt. And they found a lock of Vera's hair all in this house. But no, obviously Vera's not there. Now, they start talking to all the family members, and Nicole and Danny do end up confessing to killing Vera. But they say, well, we only killed her because Sherry wanted us to do it. Like, she asked us to do this. Now, she specifically gave them instructions on how to do it. And that's both of them said that. They were like, no, like she literally listed out word for word, action by action of what we were supposed to do. And we were just doing it because she told us to. Now, everyone in the Brooks family was charged with the murder of Vera, except for Sherry and Kevin Sr.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I again repeat, except for Sherry. The one who, through this whole story, is like the main purpose behind the murder of Vera. Now, Danny was sentenced to 40 years to life. Nicole was sentenced to 23 years on conspiracy to commit murder charges. Zachary received 4 years in prison for obstruction of justice. Shannon, which is one of her son's wives, was charged with obstruction for justice and served 30 fucking days. Michael was charged with obstruction for justice and sentenced to 5 years probation and 30 days in jail. And to this day, right now, as we sit in this podcasting room, the Brooks family, all of them live together in the same fucking home this happened in, except for Nicole and Danny because they're still in prison. Now, Zachary does meet another woman in 2015 and he does have another child. So that's where he's at. He was actually arrested and he was sent to prison in 2020 for receiving stolen property and felonious assault. And he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. So it's now 2025. So he's obviously out. Sherry, Scotty, and Kevin Sr., they were actually caught with drug trafficking charges. And Sherry did spend 40 months in prison for those drug trafficking charges. So that's the story of what happened to Vera Jo. And I will again repeat, the reason I felt this was important is because this woman was absolutely 100% taken advantage of because of her intellectual disability. She was manipulated and brought into a home. And then because of the fact that she was basically like a child in her mind, she does, I mean, at the end of the day, abuse victims are abuse victims, whether you're 8 years old or 35. However, a lot of the times people who are just like not suffering from any sort of intellectual disability will get to a point where they want to get out. They will get help, or they will try to anyways. But Vera never did. And I genuinely think it's because she was treated like fucking terrible, and she's got the mind of a child. And what do children do? They just try to do everything they can to make their abusers happy. You know, they try. And so it's very important to me that this story be told, because like I said, the other thing is her family, Vera's family, absolutely should have never allowed her to date a 13-year-old as a 19-year-old girl. I understand her brain.
I understand that your daughter's 19, but why the fuck did you let her go to that, stay at that house?
Right. Like, why?
Because you didn't want to take care of your intellectually disabled daughter?
Like, that's my point, is it's like, I understand that the Brooks are responsible for her death. I understand that. However, her family, yes, they called the police multiple times to try to get her help in that way. But I'm really struggling with the idea that you actually just let your child, okay, she was an adult, but I actually struggle with the fact that you knew you had a daughter who had an intellectual disability. And first of all, you knew she was dating a kid that was 3 or 6 years younger than her. That alone should have been a red flag for you guys, because that's not good either. Because even legally, she could have been brought up if she had survived, or if, whatever, if Sherry had wanted to, she could have fucking pressed charges against her for statutory rape because of their age difference. So it's like, you have to protect your child, right? So I understand that the family was devastated by her sister in particular was devastated by her death. But I just can't understand how a parent could allow for such a thing. Because again, this was so, again, horrific. And the fact that this woman, this Sherry woman, absolutely orchestrated this shit and has never been held accountable for it, even after being fingers pointed at her. I don't understand how somebody, because we charge people when they try to order a hit on somebody, we charge them with attempted murder, right? And if you do order a hit on somebody and it goes through, you get charged with their murder too. So I'm really having a hard time understanding how this woman, who, by the way, had a long-ass history of sexual abuse with her own children, who had a long-ass history of having her children taken from her in her home, I am really struggling with the fact that she never got brought up on any charges that had to do with Vera. And I can't figure out why, other than the fact that her family, I guess her family protected her from it. I don't understand. Because she didn't even get arrested for it. The rest of the family did, minus her and her husband. How did her and her husband not get arrested for it? It's their fucking house. How did they not get arrested for it?
Broshi.
So this is the story of the murder of Vera Jo Reigle, and it is really sad. It was very horrific. She literally was run over by a train while she was still alive.
Well, all I can say is I hope they have everlasting fucking karma.
Yeah, I mean, that would be your...
I hope they all get hit by trains.
That would be your hope, but sometimes I feel like the world doesn't work that way. So, just take it for what it is. If you meet somebody that's last name is Brooks and they live in Findlay, Ohio, you might just want to steer clear. That's all I'm saying. You might just want to walk the other way because they just might not be your kind of people. That's all. Anyways, if you like hearing this stuff, not particularly if you like hearing about people being hit by trains when they are drugged and stabbed, but just this kind of stuff, like true crime stuff, make sure you're following us on all of our socials. I will make sure that I post a picture of those coasters or make sure you check it out, because I will have posted it by the time this comes out. Check those out. They're totally cool. And then again, make sure you're following our podcast on whatever platform you listen to us on, so that you can be reminded every time we have a new episode drop, which happens to be every Tuesday at midnight. So anyways, this story sucked assholes. I'm sorry, but I thought it needed to be shared because people need to keep their eyes open wide.
If you see something, say something.
Yeah, because if you know, or if you have a child who has some intellectual disabilities or autism or anything like that, protect them with your life. They need protection. They need help. And that doesn't mean they can't live a full life. It just means you need to help them make proper decisions. So this was important to me because manipulation and literally abuse of somebody with an intellectual disability is nothing new. But I feel like the more we talk about it, maybe the more people will be more aware, because this was fucking unnecessary. And side note real quick, Willa Dean got adopted out of that home. She after Vera Jo was found dead and all that stuff, they took Willa Dean, and Willa Dean was adopted out. So she didn't stay with the family. So that's a plus side. Anyways, that is the story of Vera Jo Reigle, and I'm sorry it was not a good one, but it's got to be told. And so I guess this is the part where I'm going to say, if you stuck it out and listened to the whole thing, catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.